Quartered safe out here is George MacDonald Fraser's memoir of his experiences as a young soldier in the British Army during World War II's Burma campaign. Blending humor and stark realism, Fraser vividly recounts life on the front lines, capturing the camaraderie and harsh realities of war. Let's begin. Apart from being a first-class soldier, the new Corporal, Peel, was genial and sensible. The other additions were Watty, who had been with us at the Temple Wood, and a big humorous Yorkshireman, Morton. All three fitted in smoothly, and there was general satisfaction. Stanley was confirmed, to his quiet disgust, as Bren Gunner, with Wedge as his number 2, a position which I had sought because Stanley and I had become close as a result of the recent action, but Sergeant Hutton had refused me. I found out why the day after we returned to Maigtillo, when he told me to report to the company office. "What the hell have I done?" was a natural reaction, and he gave me one of his rare, sour grins. "Well, what have you done?" "Nothing." "Then do not fret yourself. Get your belt and hat, straighten yourself up, and do not keep Long John waiting, move." Company office in the field consisted of a camp stool with Long John sitting on it. I strode up and saluted. He gave me a courteous good morning, looked me up and down, and dropped his bombshell, a promotion to Lance Corporal, second in command of the section. Well, we needed one, but my first reaction was that the sun had got him. The very thought of being given authority over veterans like Nixon, Gramas, and the Duke, of having to direct them in action, took my breath away. Not that Lance Corporal is any great eminence, it is an appointment, not a rank, and is the worst dog's body's job in the army, as Hitler and I could tell you. But if anything happened to Peel, or even if the section got split up in a dangerous situation, as frequently happened, I would be the man in command, and I did not fancy it. I said so. "Why not?" "Well, sir, I am the youngest in the section, and I do not have much experience." "How old are you?" 19, sir. 20 next month." It did not occur to me that Long John himself, with a major's crown on his shoulder, was probably younger than most of 9 section. "If you had passed officer candidate training last year, you would probably be commanding a platoon in France by now, without any experience." So he knew I had failed to get into officer training, and also, no doubt, that I had been a lance corporal thrice before, and busted each time. I said that I would like another shot at a commission, eventually, which was like bowling him a very slow ball. "You cannot go to officer training again until this is over." His gesture indicated Burma in general. "When it is, I will see that you are sent up, and if you have been leading a section it will be in your favor." After that there was nothing to do but thank him, except with inner misgivings, draw 2 stripes from the stores, so one on each sleeve, and submit to the unbridled hilarity of 9 section. They lay about, heaving, at least Gramas did, purple with mirth and inviting anatomical impossibilities on himself. The others were kinder, merely begging to be allowed to lick my boots, clean my equipment, and fetch my food from the cookhouse. Having been through this 3 times before, I was not unduly disturbed. It was not like being a lance corporal at home, where your principal fear was of being defied and made to look foolish. Up the road, life is serious, and such worries do not even exist. And more important things were happening. My promotion coincided, I learned from the official history, with the Japanese decision to abandon the siege of Maigtillo. If only I had known I could have invited Gramas to draw the obvious conclusion. But the big news which ran through the rifle pits was that 6 Japanese soldiers had come out of the Fort Dufferin defenses at Mandalay with their hands up. For all I know, this may have been latrine gossip. I imagine that there must have been earlier cases of Japanese surrender, even if they were just individual ones. But 9 section took the rumor as a portent, and discussion was heated. "I doubt it," was Nick's verdict. "When I see a Japanese soldier crawling out of his hole with a white flag, I will believe it then, not until." "Yes, maybe," said Gramas, wanting to believe it. "Mind you, the Japanese have been getting the shit knocked out of them all over, here and at Mandalay. He must have about had it by this." "Bollocks," said Nick. "Those buggers have had it when they are dead. Look at that lot that committed suicide in the hospital. The Japanese do not give up, no, and I am telling you." "You pessimist," cried Gramas, spreading alarm and despondency. "Christ, if griping would have won the war, you would have had it over after Dunkirk. You make me tired, Nixon." "Well, I am not counting on him giving up," said Forster. "We will have to chase the buggers all the way to Tokyo." "You will all be killed before then," said Nixon, winking behind Gramas. "Bugger me, he is still at it. No, man, think on. The Japanese have been chased all the way down from Impel, he has been beaten here, he has been beaten at Mandalay, bloody hell, you have seen more dead Japanese on the road here than you have got hairs on your ass. Not on your ass, though. Never mind my ass. What I am saying is, he must be marching on his chin strap by now. And look here, Nick, suppose you were a Japanese soldier. Ah, so. Me Japanese, me sit in bunker, wait for grandmas, stick bayonet up honorable backside. If you were a Japanese soldier, insisted grandmas, and saw this lot coming, Gurkhas, and Pathans, and Sikhs, and those bloody great black buggers from the East African Division, bloody Zulus, or something, yes, and us, and all, would not you give up? I am bloody sure you would. Well, the Japanese are not bloody stupid. Of course he is bloody stupid, said Forster. He commits suicide, does he not? That is as stupid as you can get. Yes, but there is a limit, roared Gramas. That is what I am saying, see. He is bound to give up sometime. And this lot at Mandalay is the start of it, maybe. Eh? He looked round in wrathful appeal. Would not you say? The Duke remarked that one swallow did not make a summer. Who is talking about bloody swallows? Come on, Tomo, what do you say? The corporal, thus addressed, doubted if the Japanese would crack soon, if at all. From what he had heard officially, while driven out of Mandalay and abandoning his siege of Meiktila, he was preparing a big defense at a place called Pyobwe. Where the hell is that? Next town down the road. And who is going to take that? We are. Oh, for fuck's sake. Grandma stared in disbelief. Is the fucking Black Cat the only divisional sign they know? What about the Cross Keys, or the Dagger Division, or them with the bloody spiders and crossed spears? Bloody hell, Calcutta is full of them. You cannot get a drink in Jimmy's kitchen for bloody RAF and Chindits. Get the buggers down here, to Pyobwe, or whatever you call it. Where is 5th Division? Asked Wedge, voicing his obsession. They will leapfrog us sooner or later, the corporal was beginning. Yes, bloody later. Fumed Gramas. Flaming assholes. And Cross Keys Division is at Mandalay, continued Peel. I do not know about the others. Anyway, it does not matter. We will be going down the road shortly. In the bloody crap again. Gramas apostrophized the heavens. Sell the farm and buy us out. I have about had it, me. No, it is not bloody fair. I thought when we took Meiktila we would get a bit of rest, I could do with 7 days at the museum, me, and what will I get? Japanese. Fucking Tojos. Mind they do not get thee, said Forster acidly. That is right, Gramas lad. There is a bloody great big Imperial Guardsman down the road, with a samurai sword, and it has got your number on it. I am telling you, you will all get killed. Oh Wallace. Pyobwe, Tomo? It is pronounced P-O-B, and Peel's information was correct, we were to take it. I imagine that the reason 17th Division got the job was because there was not a day to be lost, and we were nearest and best organized for the work. The Japanese were digging in for a last desperate stand on the Rangoon Road. If he could hold us at Pyobwe for just a few weeks, until the monsoon broke, he might stave off defeat indefinitely, for when the rains came, they would turn southern Burma into a huge swamp where no armor or truck could operate, where the airfields would be impossible, and where even infantry could not operate effectively. You cannot fight through the monsoon was the received wisdom, and if it proved to be true, 14th Army would squelch to a halt somewhere on the southern edge of the dry belt, and the Japanese would have months in which to reorganize his defense of southern Burma. We will be up to the ghoulies in water, getting eaten to bits by leeches and jungle saws, while the little bastard is digging himself in all the way to Rangoon, was Nick's verdict. Rain? It just pisses down forever. It will be that deep in the paddy, they will have to take the Gurkhas out of the line, or the poor little buggers will drown. Maybe the Japanese will drown, too, Nick. He is just a chotawalla. Drown? Them? The bastards are fireproof, waterproof, and too fucking dumb to drown. The only way they die is Tojo's way. Ah well, we will all get killed. But if Pyobwe could be taken in time, and we could get a grip on southern Burma before the monsoon set in earnest, the Japanese might be wrapped up by the end of the year, in Burma at least. The best armies he had put into the field anywhere would have been broken and scattered north of Rangoon. The strongest link in the chain surrounding his homeland would have been broken, and the Allies would be closing inexorably from all sides, Americans in the Pacific, Australians in New Guinea and Borneo, Chinese in China and Korea, ourselves in Malaya and Siam. That was how it looked then. The war in Europe might be all but won, but Southeast Asia looked set for a long-drawn, bloody struggle which would end only with an assault on the Japanese mainland, in 1946? 1947? There were those who spoke of 1950, even. No one underestimated the Japanese, He might be a subhuman creature who tortured and starved prisoners of war to death, raped women captives, and used civilians for bayonet practice, but there was no braver soldier in the whole history of war, and if he fought to a finish, in the meantime, Pyobwe. Before we left Maiktilaw, I had my first taste of leading the section, or rather having the section lead me, for the operation was a highly technical one of which I knew nothing, and they knew everything, and then some. This often happens to young men on their first independent commands and is very educational. With the Japanese surrounding Maiktilaw, all our supplies had been dropped from the air, and even when he began to withdraw from our northern front, the road route remained hazardous, and the drops continued. Corporal Peel being otherwise engaged, I was ordered by Hutton to take the section out to assist in the collection of supplies being dropped that day, so I fell them in and marched them to the 1,500-weight truck, which would take us out to the dropping zone, a mile or so beyond the perimeter. Usually, the prospect of fatigues induced extreme lethargy and a tendency to melt into the background, but to my surprise, they were not only all present but eager. Even Grandmas, whose normal response to being roused was to turn over and go into a coma, was to the fore, armed with a water shaggle on either shoulder. "Bloody thirsty work, airdrops," he explained. "Better get yourself a shaggle, Corporal, we will sweat fucking gallons today." Corporal. This was unwonted respect, for stripe or no stripe I remained Jock, just as Peel was Tomo, and even Hutton, to the older hands at least, was Tut. Not a little impressed, I told the section to take a shaggle apiece, and the truck set off looking like a water-skinned bazaar. "Best leave them in the truck, eh, Corporal?" suggested Grandmas when we reached the drop zone. He raised one of the shaggles, opened a valve in his throat, sank most of the chlorinated contents in a gulp, and observed that he would be up all night, pissing himself cross-eyed. "Why, I just wish it was beer. Yup, let us be at it." The others also half-emptied their shaggles, hung them on the truck stanchions, and fell in belching, their radiators filled for the work ahead. The man in charge was a grizzled Service Corps warrant officer, naked save for his service cap, shorts, sandals, and the wrist brassard denoting his rank. All around him were fatigue parties from the East Yorks, Probins, Gurkhas, Baluchis, Deccan Horse, West Yorks, Gunners, Sappers, Sikhs, Jats, and every outfit in the division, and he was going horse assigning them to different areas of the drop zone. This was a hard-baked paddy bounded by markers, a dusty expanse shimmering in the heat haze, for it was early April and the temperature was rising with a vengeance. It was going to be a grueling day, and I congratulated Grandmas on his foresight about the water before reporting to the warrant officer, announcing the name of our regiment. He winced, dropped his list, and gave me a hunted look. "Did you say?" he asked, as though hoping he had not heard aright. I repeated it, and he looked despairingly at the section. "Oh bloody hell," he said, and sighed. As if life was not hard enough. He muttered something which I did not quite catch about the years of the locust. "All right, Corporal, hold them there, I will attend to you when I have detailed this lot." And he turned away like a man with a heavy load, shouting bad-tempered orders to the other squad commanders. If I had been sensitive, I would have said we were not welcome, and I would have been right. For when he had dispatched the other parties, he returned and addressed the section directly. "Right," he said grimly. "I know you lot. I was in Ceylon in 42, with your th battalion. I know all about the Pink Elephant. And I remember you in Mbola, before the war." He drew breath, while I wondered what he was on about, and continued in a quieter, almost appealing tone. "All I am asking is, keep your hands off the bloody stuff, you know what I mean. Just bring it in and stack it, right? Behave yourselves, and I will get you a few extras afterwards, okay? That is a promise, but you will have to play the game, see? Leave it to me, and I will see you right." It sounded like most offensive innuendo to me, but the section received it with polite interest. Grandmas was even nodding approval. The warrant officer gave them a last weary look and led me aside. "What are you doing with this shower? You sound Scottish." "Ah well, bad luck, son. Tell you what, I will give you this stretch, near the trucks, where I can keep an eye on them." "Right, carry on, here they come." There was no time to protest or question. The first of the big Dakotas was droning in, circling the drop zone just above our heads, the Sikh unloaders visible in its open doorway. Behind came the other planes, following the slow circle, banking slightly while the Sikhs thrust out the big bales. It was a spectacular sight, the aircraft glittering in the sunlight, the bales falling in a continuous shower. A few of them, containing machine parts and other delicate cargo, came waltzing down on little white parachutes, but most of the great canvas bundles fell in what was called free drop, hitting the paddy with resounding thumps and clouds of dust, bouncing high and careering across the plain. The fatigue parties ran to them, and in a few minutes the zone was like an anthill as the covers were ripped away and the contents dragged out, crates and boxes and metal containers by the thousand, to be carried towards the parked 3-tonners, where they were stacked for loading under the eye of the warrant officer and his shouting, sweating assistants. It was an uplifting sight, 14th Army exercising its talent for improvisation on the grand scale, feeding and arming its spearhead deep inside enemy country, demonstrating that this was a siege which the Japanese, for all their superior numbers, could not hope to win. Those leisurely wheeling American planes were symbolic, and the sight of them droning unhindered overhead must have been a bitter one to the withdrawing Japanese armies, not a zero in the sky, and food and ammunition in massive quantities pouring down to their opponents. You had to keep an eye on that pouring process, for it continued while we worked, the big bales booming down while we scattered out of the drop line. I saw one misdirected bale come streaking down to hit a jeep on the edge of the zone. It struck fair and square on the bonnet, flattening the vehicle in a tangled wreck and exploding a great cascade of Indian butter for 50 yards around. "You will be getting your chapatis dry tonight, Johnny," Nixon shouted to a party of Gurkhas, and the little men beamed and squealed, pigtails flapping on their shaven skulls as they wrestled with bundles as tall as themselves. They worked, as they did everything, with all their might, slashing the covers with their kukris, staggering away laden to the trucks, racing back for more, and bubbling with chatter and laughter, treating it as a great game. The rest of us worked as hard. In that heat, it was as exhausting as any labor I have ever done, even stevedoring in port said, but it was exhilarating, too. Our arms ached from swinging our kukris, and our hands were raw from the canvas, but we enjoyed it. As 9th Section beavered away, ripping, dragging, lifting, and carrying with a fine energetic rhythm, the warrant officer would stride over every now and then to peer suspiciously at our stacks, obviously comparing them with those of the other units. After a while, he seemed to grow less anxious, and when we broke for lunch, he even remarked favorably on the amount we had shifted. "Hard graft," panted Watty, reclining against a wheel of our 1500-weight and mopping his chest. "By God, it beats hay-making." "I could stand that, and all," said Gramas, a rich cerise from his exertions. "Aye, what? A long day in the Lawton Valley, with the farm lassies bringing the food and nasty big pints. Eh? I could manage a couple this minute, could I not?" "Pints or lassies?" jeered Forster. "That is all the haymaking you ever did, I will bet. Aye, under the bloody stacks, with your arse going like a fiddler's elbow. Shagging and supping, that is your idea of work." But Gramas was too intent on his shaggle to retort. "I would sooner be working down here than up there," said the Duke, watching a Dakota will lazily away, its bearded unloader leaning out at a perilous angle to watch a falling bale. "You know they have to change those seat crews every few trips? Fact, after a while they get disoriented, forget that they are 200 feet up. They think they can step out, that the ground is just a yard beneath them, and some of them do. Lost a few men that way, I heard." "Oh nonsense," said Forster. "You telling us they cannot tell how high up they are?" "It is right, though," said Nick. "I heard that from a fellow that saw it happen. Big Seat just walked out after a bundle, they had to scrape him into a mess tin, nothing left but his beard and bangle." He raised his voice to the skies. "Do not jump out, sing lad. This is not the frontier. You will never bounce." We worked through the afternoon, and none were more zealous than 9 Section. When the other fatigue parties were calling it a day, sitting or lying in the shadow of their transport, draining shackles or emptying them over sweat-plastered heads and dusty torsos, Nick, Watty, Gramas, and even the egregious Forster were still scouring the littered plain, finding overlooked boxes, plodding back with their burdens, and generally heaping coals of fire, it seemed to me, on the head of the mistrustful warrant officer. It had its effect. I heard him saying "good lads" as they trudged by, setting down the last loads with the sighs of men who have toiled well in the vineyard. Gramas responded with hearty affability. "Aye, warm work, staff. Nothing like a good job well done, eh?" By the time the last crate was in place, and the 3-tonners were rumbling away to the central depot, the warrant officer was being almost amiable. He waited until the other parties had gone, and 9 Section had completed a lengthy toilet in our 1500-weight and emerged in shirts and hats, and told me to fall them in. As they fell in, tired but decent, behind them 2 of the warrant officer's minions were going over our truck with practiced hands. He waited for their nod, and surveyed the section with a knowing, satisfied smirk. "Good enough, then. They have worked well, Corporal, and you have behaved yourselves, have not you?" "Yes, I know you have." He was looking positively roguish. "Oh yes, because I had the eye down on you, and you knew it, did not you? You could not old soldier me, my sons, the name is Croft, not Soft. Well, fair is fair, I am a man of my word, Over there, Corporal, under that tarpaulin. Help yourselves, lads, and do not say I'm not good to you. Beneath the tarpaulin were a few bags of tea and sugar, a carton of Lucky Strike, and a couple of cans of condensed milk, and the section fell on them with cries of astonishment and gratitude that were touching to hear. The warrant officer watched with a tolerant eye as they climbed into the 1500 weight, exclaiming over his bounty. I did not body search them, he told me confidentially. Creates a bad impression. Anyway, no need, I have got eyes in my ass, and they knew better than to try it on. He shook his head. Desperate lot, your mob. Notorious, have been since Marlborough's day, I should not wonder. Well, they do not call you the ravers for nothing, he chuckled indulgently. I just showed I was onto them, promised them extras, a bit of stick, a bit of carrot, works wonders. All right, Corporal, fall out. If he had not been 4 ranks above me, I might well have given him my opinion of his aspersions on my regiment. As it was, I felt I owed the section an apology on his behalf, but since I was up front with the driver, I did not get a chance to make it, although when we debussed I remarked to Nick that the warrant officer was a cheeky son of a bitch. He looked blank. I did not know what he was talking about. Did you, Watty? I was not listening, said Watty with contempt. Service Corps, I have shit them. Pathetic. We were at the pits. All right, said Forster, get the ground sheet down, and let us get cracking. Hey Duke, bring those shaggles over here. The Duke, bent under the weight of a dozen bulging shaggles, gave me an apologetic look. I feel like one of Fagin's apprentices, oh, well, when in Rome. Here, Forster. Forster upended the shaggles one after another, and before my astonished eyes, a mound of sugar grew on the ground sheet. Nick fingered it critically. Some balmy bugger did not drink all his water. Ah, well, he will dry out. He took off his hat, disclosing 6 packets of cigarettes, then stooped and opened his bush shirt to release a deluge of cigarette packets. Forster contributed even more from within his shirt. He then pulled his trousers out of their puttees, and wriggled, and more packets piled up round his ankles. Further sensational revelations followed. Grandmas's capacious breeches yielded, of all things, several pounds of loose tea. I do not fancy the flavour of that bloody lot, said Forster. And from beneath his vest, he brought out flat tins of fish in tomato sauce. We will swap them to the Gurkhas for chapatis and that. The little sods would sell their souls for herrings. It was the same with the rest of them. Every man Jack had plundered comestibles about him, inside button sleeves and trouser legs, under shirts, in hats. Tea, sugar, and cigarettes, mostly, but of condensed milk, pipe tobacco, tinned fish, bacon, spam, and sausage, there was no lack, and by the time they were finished, that ground sheet looked like Harrod's food hall. I felt quite guilty not contributing. Then they stood around and admired it. We had best give some to 7 and 8 sections, said Nick. What for? Said Forster, shocked. We stole the bloody stuff. Go on, you greedy bugger. This lot will last to Rangoon, easy. Anyway, they know we were out on the drop, and I do not want Jonty Armstrong going through our stash when we are asleep. He is a thieving bastard, that one. Tell you what, we will let them have the stuff that Gormless Service Corps Waller gave us. So they did, with the loose tea and sugar that would not cram into our tea and china boxes, and the odds and ends of tins left over when the mortar box containing our delicacies had been filled. Hearing Nick setting aside cigarettes for Hutton, I felt absolved of all qualms of conscience. My main concern was how the devil they had managed it. Lined up before the warrant officer, there had not been a suspicious bulge anywhere, and I had not noticed any surreptitious work during the drop collection. Ask their ancestors, said the Duke when I put it to him. It is a gift, and from what I have heard, a regimental tradition. If he had frisked them, they were dead men, but they had him weighed up, I suppose. Mind you, I thought Grandmas was looking a bit too dropsical for comfort, and if that clever warrant officer had thought to walk round them, he could not have helped noticing that half of them had humps like Quasimodo. Silly ass, asking for it. How do you mean? All that clever man's stuff about the pink elephant, it was like a red rag to a bull. Oh, they came prepared to fill the shaggles with sugar or tea, but it was his smart cracks that made them rob him blind. He is lucky they left the wheels on his jeep. What is the pink elephant? It was a pub or club sign, in Kandy or Colombo, somewhere in Ceylon, when the TH battalion were there. Sodding great thing, I believe, about 20 feet high. Someone made a bet, and it vanished. Dot turned up months later in the corporal's mess at the depot, back home. So I am told. I reflected on all this, sitting round the fire that night, full of illicit tea and condensed milk, excellent chapati obtained from the Gurkhas for looted tinned fish, plundered peaches, and enjoying unlimited ill-gotten cigarettes, pondering the Old West march saying that there is nothing too hot or too heavy, thinking about regimental tradition, looking at the hard brown faces, and reaching a remarkable, paradoxical conclusion which I hold by to this day. In word and deed, I never knew such honest men. That concludes the 6th part of the story. Thank you very much for listening. Please consider subscribing for more episodes.